Okay, so yeah, I have, and thank you everyone for coming. And I'm Chris. Nice to meet you all. And here I'm talking about this topic. So, and let's get started. I have so many things to talk about. A little bit about me. So I'm working as a lead consultant at ThoughtWorks, and I go into a bunch of companies, try to make the software engineering practice better, and I have been doing that for quite a while. And also, I've been programming in many languages. There's some list here, but yeah, and I learned a lot about different patterns, practice, how different communities thinking about different quality, different sense, have different sets of quality, what is good, what is bad, what is qualities, and what's not. So yeah, and I also teach a bunch of courses online, offline, and last one is I'm follower of many programming communities, dramas, and debate, and that's inspired me to this talk as well.
นิดนึงครับไม่ค่อยดี
Yep, okay. And I have seen a lot of people on the programming communities and inside the companies that I work with, we are debating a lot about what is the best way to program things. And yeah, that's where this session coming from. So let's talk about a little bit of inspiration. I have been programming for like 10 or 13 years now. And yeah, we all know that we all must write a good code, but what is really good code? And I'm pretty old. I guess I'm pretty old compared to the audience here, but in my university days, they taught me this book, and this is called the design pattern. And when I still in the university, they say that object-oriented programming is the best way, and we all should learn about how to abstract things correctly. And this is a book from GOF, which is actually acronym for Gang of Four, but sometimes we call them God of Four. So there's like a very strong programmer. I don't know who they are. I just know their name, but yeah. It used to be like a pinnacle of good coding design back in my university's day. And after I worked with in the industry for a few years, then I heard this talk about a very, very good talk from Sandy Mest. She's very awesome. And she's talked about how to do object-oriented programming. And one topic that she talked about is the raw abstraction is much costlier than making duplication. And that also resonates with me on the experience level. And many people in the community agree with that sentiment. But now then I realize that, hey, this is contradict of what my teacher taught me in universities, because we were talking about need to abstract things, right? And now we say that, oh, we shouldn't abstract things so much. Interesting. And I think back again, when I start my journey, first few years in my programming career, we have this as a pinnacle of good code. It's called the clean code. And now I don't think until this day, sometimes we use the word clean code and good code interchangeably for some reason. And come to think about it, is clean really mean good? I don't know, but some things to think about. And then after that there's a lot of articles that talk about, hey, maybe clean code is not the right thing to do anymore. I think this is article from Dan Abramov, which is a very famous person in React communities. If you following the React, he's the author of the Redux, which is a very big state library in back. And now he's still working actively on React. Right. Okay, next, let's talk about JavaScript front-end frameworks. And boy, we have so many of them. So I think this is just one that I can think of. I believe there's much more than 5. I'm not sure if even 1,000 at this point, but okay. And I think some of you resonate with the way that each framework do things. Some of you might enjoy Vue, Angular, Svelte, or React. Personally, I found Solid to be super promising, but it's very hard to get a chance to work with it extensively. But yeah. So there's so many frameworks, and I think the audience here, since this is JavaScript Bangkok, I think you have some of favorite one. Maybe not in this slide, but I guess you have some favorite. And then a while, we have people who reject all the frameworks here and say that no frameworks, let's do HTMX. And I think we have the session about this approach in the afternoon, which is interesting to see. And then they say that is too complex and unnecessary. But okay, well, there's a lot of contradict opinion out there, right? Well, it seems we have so many opinions on what is the right way to build a system. And when I see the debate, or when I even enjoy the debate myself, right? We usually argue against if there is an objectively correct way to approach or build these things, which is raise the question, is there such thing as objectively good code, or is it everything is just an opinion, or is it everything is a subjective and you can do whatever you prefer? And that is one sentiment that is very common, that just choose whatever framework you like, doesn't matter, just choose anything that you're good at, doesn't matter. So that's another stance that I have seen, and maybe they're right, maybe they're not, but the good question is everything subjective, or is there some objectivity to it? And my answer is yes, there is such things as objectively good code, but it is not it's not like what many engineers might think about what objectivities mean. So today agenda is let's understand what objective really means, and then we're gonna define what is objectively good code. And we're gonna try to see some examples of heated debate in JavaScript communities and try to apply that and see how it can be applied. Okay, so let's get started with subjectivity and objectivity. So I do the common first. When I started talk, I do the very common thing, which is, hey, what does it mean to be, what objectivity exactly means? And I Google it. And honestly, I don't really like the definition, because the definition that comes in is that objectivity means lack of favoritism and lack free from bias. And I don't know what you guys think, but you folk think, but can we really define something by lack of another things? Can I really say mouse is defined by not a laptop? I don't know. But definition is weird, very weird. It's defined by lack of something. Oh, but true, maybe some word should be defined that way, but then what is very objective? Because I guess if I just walk around and chilling out, then I am being objective because I just chill and I have no favor. I just walking in the park. That's not really it. And then, so I try to do this again. just strip out objectivity. What about the objective, right? An objective is mean to have things that you aim for and you have a goal toward. And okay, this definition seems to be much clearer than lack of something. But get back to that a little bit. So now I realize why when people debate on everything, they try to put objectivity as an adjective to everything, every their opinion, because objectivity seems to be defined as something good, lack of bad. So my opinion is lack of bad quality, and I don't know. I don't think that's a productive way to conversation, but anyway. So if we take just the objective, right, then objectivity might be defined as to have an objective or to have a goal. And if we combine with the previous definition, which is lack of bias or lack of favoritism, then we might be simply define objectivity as to pursue some objective effectively without personal bias or favoritism. But then my question is, where does these goals coming from again? And I'm gonna answer that question with another question. What do you care about when you are code? There's so many things that different people care about. Some people, maybe it's performance, readability, maintainability, security, longevity, or maybe it's simply something like not need to wake up at the night and fix the production problem. I think most of us care about that for sure. But I realized that these things that we care about is become the goal that we could aim for. So, what does it mean to have an objectively good code, right? I think the objectively good code is the code that have highest chance of achieving the defined objective. It's simple as that. So no favoritism, no personal bias for sure. We have one goal and one objective. The objectively good code is the code that help you achieve that effectively. And now let's raise the question about, okay, but where does the objective come from? And I think it's come from what do we really care. Maybe you care so much about performance, which is fine. And if you define that, okay, I care about performance, right? And then you can have two systems and you can objectively compare those systems. Just look at how much time and resource is consumed. And now you can become objective about the system design itself. Or how much do you care about quick iteration? Maybe you care about, hey, we need to be productive. We need to launch product quick. We need to fix things quick and make the software progress quick. And after you have that goal in mind, right, then you can be objective about it. You can evaluate based on all stats and data. You can evaluate based on the time that you measure, so on and so forth. But once you have objective inside, once you know what you care about, then we can truly be objective about system evaluation. And I think this is very important when we look into a bunch of different design patterns and architecture. It's very important to understand what we really care about and what the pattern care about, and we can compare that. And that can lead, I think that's gonna lead into much better understanding of how each pattern can benefit how benefit in our work. So let's go through the example. And I'm gonna start with a very simple one. And since I'm been programming quite long, and I'm not sure if new programmers have been heard of this pattern. In the past, there's a pattern called one return rule. And basically, the idea is that in the programming language where you still need to do the resource cleanup, such as C programming language, then it is advised that, hey, you should be return just one, you have to have just one return, so you need to make sure that you clean up all the memories, all the connection and everything before you exit, right? So it is advisable in the past that you have one single return. And today, I think we are more on the right side, which is the early return pattern, where you try to organize all the edge case and unhappy part on the top and return immediately, just to make it cleaner to look. And I think these two patterns. Now, if we ask which pattern is better, right? Then I think it's very hard to evaluate on its own. Maybe you think that the right feel right, the left feel right, I don't know. But if once we put the objective into this pattern, such as if objective is to make sure that all the code that we do have the proper resource cleanup, then it is pretty clear that the pattern on the left, on the right side of me, sorry, is much better and pattern on the left. And on the opposite side, right, if we want to make sure that the code the objective is to make the code easy to follow, it is pretty clear that code on the left is better on the right. So it's boiled down to, again, the question of what do you care about when you code? And I'm gonna repeat this message around 3 times during this talk, and you will understand the importance of this question. And I kid you not, because I work as a consultant, right, and I go in a lot of companies, and I have seen some people still advocate for single return in the modern programming language where you actually have garbage collection. So sometimes we just following the pattern without understanding the objective of the pattern itself. And that's really one thing that it shows that the awareness of objective of the design patterns making you more logical and thinking things very true. And if you don't know that what is the objective of the pattern, I don't say no. If you don't aware of that, then you become like, hey, I have been doing this for 20 years. This feels right to me, and therefore everyone should do this, which is, I don't think it's a productive stance to learn the programming at all. So only after you decide what do you care about, only after that, then you can be objective about which code or design pattern is actually better. Okay, the next one is a little bit relatable and heated, which is the React useEffect API. I have been using React since we are still many years ago, where there's still a class component, and I think if you are new to React, then you might see the hooks and useEffect as a de facto standard and natural ways of doing React, but I would say it is not. Before that, we have things called class component, and we turn it into the hook. And useEffect is one of very controversial hook, and until today, I think David has talked about having this talk in last year or last 2 years, I can't remember. But the point is, until this day, useEffect is still very hard to use and very confusing to many programmers. And the data actually show that as well. I don't have the pure statistic to prove, the real stat to prove, but based on what I have seen and sentiment community, I think it's pretty clear that significant proportion of React developer, even the senior one, still find useEffects very confusing. Okay, so let's get back when we still try to introduce hook and compare about hook, useEffect, essentially not the hook code pattern, but useEffect and the lifecycle component, right? If I just put it side by side here, which one is better? I think there's going to be a lot of opinions on which is better, right? But I think if once we put the objective into evaluation, then I think it is going to be easier to understand. And okay, so if the objective is to reduce the mental model required, one good thing about useEffect, which React team also advocate for this to the point, and I think that Dan or someone, many people in the React core contributor wrote about why useEffect is awesome. Honestly, and in my personal opinion, to the point that sometimes I feel like are they gaslighting me to useEffect, but I don't know. But if we think about it, right, if the way that they advocate that, hey, if you useEffect is just the way to think about useEffect is you try to synchronize external side effect into the component. You try to synchronize something from the external world into the component based on the dependency that you put in. And if you think of it that way, right, it's one single mental model that can cover all of the lifecycle hooks. So if the objective is try to reduce the number of mental model that you need to note and cover everything, I think it's like 7 lifecycle hooks, I can't remember, then it's sure on the left side it's much better. It's just one single mental model with a caveat, but honestly there's a caveat that I don't know why, because when you try to say think nothing from the outside world, then there's 2 ways to do nothing, which is empty array, and it means that you think one time, and there's another type of nothing, which is undefined, which means you think everything. But I think I think that really leads to confusion because there's 2 types of think nothing. So you need to know this very secret of useEffect, and I think that creates a lot of confusion. And if I get to do this, I might try to make it more explicit that there's 2 types of nothing which is behave differently. But now they try to say, hey, there's 2 types of nothing that you need to know, empty array and nothing. But anyway, if the objective is to reduce the number of mental model required, then sure, useEffect, you just need to remember one thing, apply to every life cycle, nice. But if the objective is to make API clear and easy to follow for public audience, again, I don't have the real statistic to prove that, but I think it's pretty clear that significant proportion of React devs still confusing about useEffect until this day. So I would say that it failed this objective. And when we have 2 people talk, and when we have 2 sides, right, then one might say that, hey, you remember just one thing, you can do everything, it's so simple. But then on the other side, we have but wait, I just want to load the data into component, and now I just want to do that. And now I need to learn that there's a synchronization mechanism, and when you put this thing, then it do what I do instead of I writing component did mouth. That is so complex. I think it can be arced on either side. It's simple in one objective, but it's complex in another objective, right? So let's get back to again. Only after you have decided what do you care, then you can be objective about which code or system design is better. And the next one is one and two-way bindings. I think there's in JavaScript front-end frameworks, I think there's maybe two main ways to think about state. And one is more on the side of two-way binding, where you have just variable, and when you change the variable, you can change variable directly, and it just reactivity just go back. Like on the example, it's a kind. I think it's come from Swell maybe 4, because I just learned that Swell 5 you need to put the state in the morning. But anyway, and on the right side there's a advocate for one-way binding, where it's advocate for, hey, you should not change the state directly. You should do it via another function or event. And it's a one-way binding because you cannot change the state. You need to go to the event, and if it flux, then it's dispatched, and then get back to, and then the data flow is one-way data flow. And this one is you can change the directly. So on the right side, right, if your objective is to try to see everything at once and try to quick development, then yeah, it is the right side here is much better, because if you do it in the lab pattern, then you just want to pass count by one when people click the button, and now I really need to define the new event called increase function called increase count, and go back, and now it's another layer of indirection. I want to read everything directly. I don't want to look into this unnecessarily indirection, so you can ask for that. But if your objective is to try to see everything at once, sure, the right is better. But if you want to make sure that you have meaningful description of why state changes, then the left side is much better, because it try to enforce you, hey, when you want to change the state, don't change it directly, create an event, name it properly, and then we can track all the state change based on those names. And that's the power of one-way binding, which is good on one thing, good on that objective, but not good on another objective. And maybe some of you might ask, but hey, Chris, on the right side, then you can actually wrap it in a function, and you can achieve the one-way binding as well. And I say, yes, it's true, you can do that. But then that means that you prefer having more options than less options, right? And that is not the sentiment that everyone shares. And to be honest, there's a language such as Go or Python where they say that strip out the options, just do the same things, right? So even though that having more options might seem to be something that objectively more valuable to you, but when you drill down to it, it might be not. And sometimes it's much better to don't have options. And I cannot argue whether it's better or worse. It's up to what is your, get back to the same question again. What do you care about? Yep. And I think the one-way binding and two-way binding is boiled down into, I think many of us is working in form-based application, right? Even our sponsors, such as Agoda, Fastwork, right? Complicated app, but then it's boiled down to hotel booking, then you have a form, then you submit it, right? And when you have this kind of form, then you will ask, hey, I just have a form and I want to submit it. Then why do I need to have all the events, set name, set title, set occupation to buy the data into the state to do some business logic inside for the state? Why can't I just buy it? And that's more simple, right, in this kind of context. But back in the day, I used to work on project management app where there's a task and you create, and there's on the top there's a bunch of notification. And one thing that we want to do is when there's new urgent task, whether it's coming from other people or coming from ourselves, we should alert that, hey, new urgent task, check out. And if I only have the bunch of state, which is bunch of tasks inside my state, and I need to try to diff it to see whether there is new urgent task coming in every time change. Wow, oh my God, that is so complex, right? But why can't I simply have the event, maybe urgent task create event, but now I need to go look into the state chain, diff it, and see that, hey, new urgent task coming. I need to put the notification. Now, in this context, seems like the complexity and simplicity just turns on the opposite side. Because if you don't name properly on when the task is being urgent, and then you don't have the event to track, and all you can do is try to diff the tasks themselves, right? And as we try aware more of the power of one-way binding, right? This then you can see, hey, this go against the objective of one-way binding, where you try to use just set only, and you don't name the event of the state chain properly. And then you can see that as you're aware of objective of each design pattern, then you can see what go against it much better. I think I can go on with so many. As I said, I work with many programming language, and I can go on with many examples in software engineering history. There's so many examples of this, but the takeaway that I want to say here today, and it's not about everything is trade-off, which is true, but that's not what the things that's not what I want to say today. Know what you care about. You need to care about something subjectively in order to be objective. And I think the biggest misconception in the engineering community is subjectivity actually enhances the objectivity. When I see people debate on what is the best practice, they try to remove their subjective preference or what they care about out of the equation, which the impression that it makes their argument much more objective and logical. I would say no. I would say the opposite. Awareness of what you care about actually enhance the objective quality and your objective logical evaluation of the system. UseEffect can be good or bad API. It's based on what is your objective and audience, right? And I think and once you know that, then I think there's sentiment that nowadays, why do you need more than simple HTML, CSS, JavaScript, right? And people, I think there's a lot of people on the internet saying that, hey, JavaScript programmers, you invent new frameworks every day just to keep your job. And I say that I think I think that that is not productive to both them, both people, both them and both us. I think when you say something is wordless and unnecessarily complex, what you should start from aware on what you care about, accept the subjectivity nature of it. Then after that, you can absorb different values, absorb something that you might not care about. And once you understand that, hey, I don't like this pattern because they care about something that I don't give a shit about it, then you can learn the value of that pattern. And this is how you grow to be more versatile engineer. And I want to end this talk from the quote in the leadership and psychotherapy. And by the way, I am really into the psychology and psychotherapy, which is another topic, well, not for today, but yeah. The good quote here is that awareness precedes choice and choice precedes changes, which is come from Robin S. Sharma. And I can say that as a consultant who need to go and improve many engineering practice, when I aware of what I care and I accept the nature of that, and I start to absorb what people in their organization care, and I start to empathize with that, and that's when I can really make change to the organization and the way that they're building software. I cannot make change if I don't accept what they care about. So, but it starts from aware of what I care. So, yes, thank you for today.
Okay, thank you, Chris.